it's a great story for me. Two gentlemen with long journey, both from different backgrounds and different journeys. We're going to start with Will because he's going to have to leave a little bit early. And but I just appreciate you both coming by. Let's give that SMWW a welcome. Will, I'll start out with everybody, so I'm not picking on you. Assuming you went to high school, tell us your story. Where'd you go?
Went to a couple of high schools in
There we go.
Here's what happened.
NIL?
No. I wish. Went to high school, grew up in Houston, so went to a high school that was close to my house. Got in trouble as a young man on the football team, and then my mom said, "You were going into this school." I transferred to Marian Christian, which is a Catholic high school. Got my education, didn't get in more trouble, and I went to Rice and played at Rice for 4 years.
Who was your trainer there, your strength coach?
Strength coach was Keith Madden and, Keith Irwin and Mad Dog.
I knew Jeff was a 4-day state guy.
4-day state.
Jeff, Jerry Simmons there.
Yes.
Okay, see?
Yes.
I've been around a long time.
Yes.
Okay. Now, you went to Rice, which is pretty impressive to be kicked out of school, kind of, you know.
Well, the
you must, who was your coach then at Rice?
At Rice, it was Watson Brown and then Jerry Burke.
Watson Brown, great story. Okay, keep going then.
So played there for 4 years. Thought I was going to the league. It didn't work out. I went and played arena football for 4 years. And then I started coaching. Played arena football for 4 years.
Where'd you play?
Detroit Drive. Tim Markham. You know Tim Markham? Okay, the great Tim Markham.
You played against Kurt Warner then?
Oh, yeah. Well, I coached against Kurt Warner.
I love it.
I was trying to get Kurt to the NFL.
Right.
This is how I started to know this guy. I was calling all the time. Hey, get this guy out of here.
Yeah.
So then I started coaching. I coached in arena football for a while. I can't even give you the years. And then the first XFL started.
Yeah.
The WWE, and then I stopped coaching and got onto the personnel side because Mike Keller was working in Grand Rapids where I was, and he took the job with XFL. Told him I wanted to get into personnel. Gave me an opportunity. Started there. The league only lasted for 1 year. And then I said, I got to find a job. Was I going to coach or scout? I wanted to stay in the scouting side. Applied for a job, well, a couple college jobs, and I went to Jacksonville to interview for the pro job, and didn't think I was going to get that job. Kansas City called and wanted to give me an area job, and I was like, well, I guess I'm going to have to go to college. I'm going to have to drive in my car. But then Jacksonville called that afternoon and said, we want to make you assistant director pro, and I said, I don't have to travel.
Who was your GM?
The GM was, Coughlin was there. The GM was Michael Hughes.
Michael Hughes. Okay.
Yep.
Okay.
And
so then what?
So I was there for a year. I was an advanced scout, so I did 16 advances, which means that you got to fly to where the game is. I had to write 53 players, give them all the stuff. And Coach Coughlin was the head coach, and I have to have the report on his desk at 6:45 in the morning. So I spent all night getting it there, and he would get in and he would. Every misspelling, every period, comma, and I used to hate it, but it made me better at what I'm doing now. But 9/11 happened. My mom and dad were, in Texas. I wanted to get back close to home. And then the Cowboys called. They had the arena team, the Dallas Desperados.
That's right.
Joe Avizano was the head coach. They were looking for somebody to be the defensive coordinator because I had been there for a while. I've done it for a while. And I said I would come, but I want to still continue to scout.
Yeah.
And they gave me the opportunity to do that. So I would coach the arena team from January to June, and then I would continue to do the scouting stuff once that, and that's been there ever since.
You've been in the Cowboys ever since. What's your role right now?
The vice president of player personnel.
And what does that include?
It includes college and pro scouting, working with the cap guys, understanding that, and really, because the Joneses aren't around as much, they allow us to do a lot of things. So I'll do some GM sort of things. I got to talk to the trainers and the strength staff. Some of those things.
I've been down. If you haven't been to Cowboy Stadium or Jerry's World, it's a fascinating program. Mark, totally different story. I don't even think you got kicked out of school. Let's go back to high school.
Yeah. So there's a lot of crossover here. That's kind of good stories. But I got a break, so my situation was I moved to Lawrence, Kansas when I was a sophomore in high school. I had to pay my own way to college, so I went to University of Kansas because it's $700 back then to go to Kansas for one semester. That's how inexpensive it was. And then my second year, what?
You're old, 7.
Yeah, right.
I don't know what he's talking about.
Yeah, right.
It's my second year at the University of Kansas. They opened up sports management. They'd never had that program before. Really, it was only at Ohio State and UMass.
Ohio University.
Ohio University. So no one had really had it, but I heard about it because I played all the sports, but I wasn't good enough at any sport, right? But I played all the sports, so I was like, I want to be involved in sports in some capacity. Didn't know what it was going to be or where the path would go. But I heard about the program, went to school there. You know, I'm taking human anatomy because they had no idea really what I was expecting at first, like in my undergrad. Just because they knew what was sports management. So we kind of got through it. But in my senior year to graduate, Kansas, you have to do an internship. And so my situation was I had volunteered in the athletic department through college and did everything. Sold tickets, hung posters, licked stamps for recruiting. And so I knew everybody could be out the athletic department, not realizing how really smart that was for me. Because to get my internship, I applied at the University of Kansas because I thought maybe I'll be an AD one day, that'd be great. So Kansas said, yes, we'll make you an internship. And I was like, this is great, man. Athletic department intern. And then the Kansas City Royals called. And we're looking for a scouting intern, a young guy. Who would you recommend? And thankfully, because I was first through the program and that I volunteered, they offered me the opportunity to go interview with the Royals. So I went and interviewed with the Royals. I get down to I'm down to the final 2 to get an internship with the Royals in their front office, which was amazing from where I've come. And then that weekend, I get a call from Terry Bradway, who was the director of college scouting at the Chiefs, who became the Jets general manager. But he was the director of college scouting. I just saw him again, which is great about the combine. So many stories. But anyway, so he calls me on the phone, and it was my most brilliant leveraging moment I've ever had in my life without even knowing it. He said, Mark, we'd like to interview you for a position possibly in our scouting department. We've never had an intern in our scouting department before in Kansas City. That's something we want to try. I said, that's great, Mr. Bradley. I'd love to. He's like, do you have anything going this week? I go, I've got a final interview with the Royals on Wednesday. Not really thinking about what that meant. And Terry's like, can you be here tomorrow at 8 a.m.? And I'm like, yes, sir. So I drive to Kansas City and interview with Terry Bradway and become an intern with the Kansas City Chiefs, which was a dream, right? I mean, I was a kid that Saturdays for me, I grew up in a small town in North Carolina. Saturdays, like you're playing football in the streets, you're running around the creeks, whatever it was. Sunday was like I go to church and I watch pro football. Like I was a pro football junkie as a kid. So to be able to be in Kansas City when it was Joe Montana, Marcus Allen, Derek Thomas, Dale Carter, all these great players, it was amazing. So I was right place, right time, but I put myself in the right place, right time, right? With the volunteering and all that stuff. So it kind of was a great situation that all kind of came together. Spent 2 years there. It's kind of like a GA. And then a real job opened up in Tampa that actually paid $25,000 with and actually health insurance. With my first 2 years in Kansas City, I made $7,000 total. So that's one of the sacrifices you have to really mentally get through if you want to start to go down into this world of sports. Spent my years growing up in the Bucks. So pro personnel assistant, pro scout, did the advanced scout. So I did what Will did. And that's a lot of work, it's grinding. And my first report I ever turned in, I had the jersey swapped on one of the kickoff coverages, and I got chewed to shreds. They're like, if I can't trust this number, how can I trust anything you wrote in the entire report? So it was like, the attention to detail got really impressed with me. I was really blessed that I got to work with, in my career, probably 15 people that became general manager and 25 people that became head coaches in national football. It was just, we had a tunnel in the Tampa Bay area and the Kansas City area. Just a lot of people came through. Became then the coordinator of pro scouting, director of pro scouting, and then in 2009 became the GM of the Bucks. And did that for 5 years. And obviously didn't pick enough good players. Our quarterback fell off the wagon, which was really sad to watch. In ways, it's probably not the fair, but it does mirror a lot of Deshaun Watson right now, which is really bizarre in terms of how great he was, and then how everything's kind of just not that. That same thing happened to our quarterback, Josh Freeman. It was just sad and kind of tragic. But so I did that. So I was GM, put 20 years in the NFL. Will's being very nice about himself. He is basically the GM of the Dallas Cowboys. There's no such thing as that title, but he does it. That's Jared. But he does have a very, very difficult job. And when you get to those levels, you're answering to ownership, and that's a different level than just being a scout. But yes, so that's my comment.
Okay, line up for questions here, because Will's gonna be leaving in a little bit, and I want to get him in. I just want to comment, my relationship with Mark, speaking of the quarterback, Matt Moore was a free agent. It's funny, you're here, we met each other, and Matt ended up staying in Miami. My point was, that's where I met Mark, and he became a teacher for us, and then I was telling the story, Adam Schefter called, because he wanted to know what was happening to Matt Moore, was he going to stay in? And I said to Adam, are you coming to Indy every year? Yeah. I said, well, I'll make a deal with you. You'll be the first to know if you come by the conference. He's been coming, I think, for 18 years. It's a good story. So watch out for me. I'm a little leverage guy here. You know what I'm saying? But we'll take some questions here before you leave, Clay, and Mark can add in. And I appreciate both of you coming by, but ask anything you want. Let's start over here.
Joseph Hughes from Minnesota State University, Moorhead. You guys both talked about your history as athletes, so I was just curious, what traits as an athlete do you think translated to your sports career, and what advice would you give to somebody following a similar path?
For me, the number one thing is teamwork, right? You're looking for guys, people that have gone through something and built something with other people, gone through the trials and tribulations, right? You're looking for that and know what it means to be on a team, because you don't do it by yourself. So look, for me, people who played sports before understand there's also the brotherhood that comes with it, and there's some fighting, but understanding the relationship that we have in our job and responsibility. Some people can't handle that. You gotta have people, so if you've been around sports, that, to me, that helps.
Yeah, I quickly say perseverance. There's a lot of times through my career where I was like, what am I doing? Why am I actually doing this? I've got friends out there making hundreds of thousands of dollars a year. I'm just grinding away. And just to push yourself through that, the grind, and enjoy the process instead of like thinking about where I want to be next, be the best at where you are now.
That's a great turn. Next question.
I just want to start by thanking you both for being here. It means a lot to me, and especially a lot of others. Like me, who are looking to get into player personnel and football administration, be able to talk to you. My question is for Will, but really for both of you guys. You mentioned working for Tom Coughlin. Tom Coughlin is famously detail-oriented. A lot of us know about Coughlin time. As tough as it might have been back then, how does working with such detail-oriented coaches and personnel improve you as a professional?
I mean, that's what it's all about, because you learn how, if you get trained that way, then you learn what is expected and the right way to do it. And Coach Coughlin was wonderful for me because of getting at the NFL level and wanting to be there. Because here's a story, like I was a coach and I was trying to learn. I was thinking about getting into player personnel, but I wanted to learn the language. And again, this is coming back to Mark. I would read Pro Football Weekly. I would do a draft book every year, and I would read it from front to back so I could learn the terms and also learn players. And then I would call Mark to find out about players. They would cut players, and so the arena football game was like the scheme y'all had in Tampa, one gap, da-da-da-da. So that's how I got into it and learning that. But the detail of Coach Coughlin helps me. It helps me kind of understand. It helped me understand the importance of being accurate, being detailed, hitting it so there was no questions asked. Like the work that I did was on point with what they wanted. So that's the same thing I require for my staff now. That's the right way that you have to do it, because I'm counting for you to bring that in.
Mark, you have anything to add?
Just one quick story is John Green kind of really did it to me. I mean, I worked with Coach Dundee, John Green. John called me out in the middle of the draft meeting. And we were doing the study, I can remember it was Alex Smith and Aaron Rodgers. And for some reason, we got started talking about tight ends. It might have been Mercedes Lewis or something. He's like, this is all our scouts, and I'm my second or third year with Coach Green. And he's like, Dominik, and we're all sitting there. He goes, Dominik, stand up real quick for me. Yes, sir. He goes, who's the third string tight end in Cleveland again? And I'm like, I don't remember. I didn't. I said, Coach, I can't think of it off the top of my head, but I have the other one. He was like, then why do we have you here? Why are you here? Wow. What's the point of having you here? And I was like, and that, by the way, it was Chad Mustard. I will never forget his name. Just that he taught me again, like, I thought I was doing my job, and I could actually rank it up one more notch, and I'd say that's really something.
I love that story. Next question. Let's keep going.
Hi, good afternoon. My name is Hogan. I'm from Phoenix, Arizona. My question is for Will. So you kind of talked about you have a background in arena football and the XFL. How has that kind of experience translated to your current position and helped you, if at all?
Well, when you are in the Arena League and those other leagues, you have to really hunt for players. Yeah, you got to figure out where to find them. You got to go high, low, different conferences, different, So the grind. I learned the grind from that, and it's helped me. Like arena football, back in the day, you had to play both ways. So you had to take someone that was an offensive lineman, and they had to be able to pass rush. So you had to understand. It taught me, arena football really made me think about the mechanics of playing each position. It was a big part of my growth.
No comment on it. Okay, next question. Thank you.
So my name's Keone. I'm a student at Lane University studying sports management. I'm originally from Los Angeles, California. I'd like to thank both of you for taking the time out of your busy day to come speak with us today. And my question is for Mark. My question to you is, how did you handle adversity and criticism as being the GM of the Tampa Bay Buccaneers during your time there?
Yeah, I tried to, I think my wife struggled with more than I did, right? Because they read a lot and see a lot when you're at work. I just, again, for the most part, I put my head down and just kind of go through it and know that every day, even though we didn't have the success I was hoping we would have, that I know that I was trying to do everything I could to make this team one step better. And that was kind of my overall goal. So even though that maybe things fell apart or we had a situation come off the field or we lost a game, my goal was, okay, how can I try to make the team a little bit better instead of like worrying about what's going wrong and what's everybody saying about me. It's a hard world out there on social media right now. I mean, Will knows as well as I do. When you talk to these players at the combine and you start talking to them about the social media world is really messing some kids up right now in terms of how hard the social media.
Will, you're in the spotlight there with the Cowboys. You to comment on this?
Yeah, I mean, the social media part of it, all that stuff it's amazing that people get the opportunity to speak and voice their opinions about you, but then it's amazing like to go in the locker room now and to see the players, like it'll be halftime or at the end of the game, the first thing they do is look at their phone.
No, I can't imagine. John Wood didn't have to deal with that. Let's go next question.
My name is Malik Mundy. I'm from Owensboro, Kentucky. And I was just wondering how that you would leverage relationships with former players to gain some insight on like team culture, team evaluations, and also scouting opportunities.
How'd you learn from your players?
Oh, how did I learn from my players? Excuse me. How did I learn from my players?
Yes. How did you gain insight on team culture, player evaluations, and scouting opportunities? Like, how did you leverage that with players that you've either been on your team or that you're looking at?
Well, it's you experience shows you what you're looking for, what you want, and the more experience that you have, the more traits that you find, the things that you like. For me, it's the character of people. When you find players, are they going to work through it? Are they going to grind? So you find people in different places and you pull that information and you have a Rolodex of people that give you an opportunity to kind of understand people like that.
Any comment, Mark? Okay, I got you. Let's go next. Thank you, Mark. Go ahead. I got
Hi, my name is Joey Biddle. I'm a junior student at Woodbury University. So I'm trying to get player personnel and scouting. What advice would you give to someone like me who, in a couple of years, will be graduating, trying to get in that player personnel space? And in that process, what should I do to kind of
Let's go with Will because Will's leaving in 5 minutes. Mark will be back here. You circle back around. Go ahead, Will. Your comments on that.
I think what you do is, like Mark said, you got an intern. You have to do whatever you can to get your foot in the door when the opportunity comes. And then be prepared for that and be prepared to go get coffee, do all those things. You're not going to be, one of the things I struggle with now is new generation, they all want to be the GM like the first day that they get there.
Right.
You're going to have to grind through it. It's to go show up in where, however you can learn. But the internship is the initial way to get in there.
The other thing, what school did you go to?
Woodbury University?
Do they have a football program?
Yes.
Okay, so they don't get involved in the football program in some capacity. Right now, it's just as a volunteer. And the other thing I'm sitting there and say is anybody who's trying to get the NFL, it may not be the glorious way, but ticket offices are always hiring. And there is a chance that you can find your way to try to go see the personnel people after hours and see if there's a way you can try.
Our next panel's tickets with the colors that you that have. And it's all right. Let's go to you.
My name is Tony Sarniol at NIU College of Law. My question has to do with as GMs or people that work in
in the front office. When dealing with agents, what are, as somebody that wants to be an agent, what are some things that make the relationship smoother versus kind of complicated, like the things that agents do that kind of.
It's a fair question to both of you. Go ahead.
For me, it's honesty and then compromise, because if you're an agent, you're representing the player, you're trying to get the best deal for that player, but there's also the human element, like, we're negotiating. Negotiation is when both of us can win, and tends to be agents that have power want to try and make it a little bit more difficult. But if you have that relationship and you're honest, okay, and you're doing the best for your player, Mark, your comment.
The only thing I'd sit there and say is if you go that route is don't go for the GM to build the relationships right now. Build it through the pro department. They're the ones who get you to workouts, and those guys can sometimes grow, or those girls can sometimes grow to the GM role. But build a relationship with them where it's real. So like when I see you at the combine, I'm happy to see you. Like he taught, just about the communication part, but really if you start from the agent world, tap into the pro department. Don't worry about the GM at the start.
Go ahead, next question.
Hi, my name is Caitlin Scott. I went to the University of Georgia and I'm a third-year law student. This question is for you, Mark. From a general management perspective, how would an 18-game season affect roster management, player health, and overall front office strategy?
The 18 games.
18 games. Number one, you're going to lose preseason game. That'll help. Number two, we may lose more preseason games, and you'll see more club in the squad if possible. In terms of roster management, what I'm hearing is there'll be an extra bye week included into that. So which will give you, now the players have 2 weeks of buys. You'll start the season, I think they'll push the season or start the season a little bit sooner. But the only thing that's good that's different from where I was is that these practice squads are a lot composed so much differently now. I couldn't even have a veteran on my practice squad, right? And I had 8 was my maximum when I first started, was only 5 as a GM. Now it's 16 guys, and they can be different levels. That to me, by the way they've changed it, I think you can get through the 18 games as the guy on the outside not putting the helmet on. But in the end, I think it's going to happen. It's not if it's going to happen, it's when, but I think the roster management is just making sure you're maximizing that practice squad.
Will, your last comment, we're going to kick you out of your Ike's right there because we promised you get out. Do your comment, and then I'll follow up. No, that comment on the
it's
18 games.
To me, it's football is a physical game. The 18-game season, you have to manage the roster the right way. That practice squad, and we were having a meeting the other day. Practice squad gives you an opportunity to structure the positions that you probably feel like you're going to be hit at and be able to use those players and figure out how you manipulate and manage the roster. It's also the analytics, the sports science, all that stuff to be able to get your players back on the field.
Will, you get out of here. Let's give him an SMWW. Drop mic, we call it. Okay, let's go next question to Mark. Thank you, Will. Good luck,
I would
Calvin.
also add just to the 18-game thing that I was thinking about, as you said it, you're going to have to work with your coaching staff. They may need to take the path off a little bit more. You're going to have to be a little bit more willing to let the player take less stress on his body during the whole season. And that's something that you're going to have a compromise with your coaching staff.
And the NFLPA is leveraging by saying they don't want it at the end of the day. Money talks, and there's a big global money out there, and I do think it'll get there, and kickoff return, etc. Next question.
Hi, my name is Mason Unton, and I am studying sports coaching as a freshman at Butler, and I'm also a sports manager for the football team. What advice would you say the great pro NFL coaches have, and their traits, and terms of what I should develop and try to become so I can get to that at some point?
Well, it's knowledge of the game, right? It's because here's the thing. Players have 2 things that they want in your locker room. Number one, they want the money, rightfully so. Nothing wrong with that, right? They should get paid. The second thing is they want to know they're getting better, right? As soon as a coach walks in that room and the player knows that coach doesn't maybe know as much as the previous coach or maybe not as much as the player, you're going to lose that player, right? He's going to start tuning you out. He's going to start thinking, I'm just going to have to coach myself, I guess. I'm just going to have to get through the season. So a truly great coach, to me, schematics, he's got to understand the schematics of the game and be able to explain that to players, like, well, here's what you can do, here's what you can do. So if you really want to get into it, you're going to have to become the savant in terms of what, learning more about the playbook and how it works and what the different positions are expected to do. That's great.
Next question.
Hi, my name is Doug Haynes Mills. I'm from Shawnee, Kansas. And my question, for Mark, obviously for Mark, is as a general manager for a team, what was your largest struggle?
There was some winning. It was our quarterback.
Yeah.
You know, it was a unique situation. The rails, like you could see the rails were coming off the young man in terms of the choices he was making. And they tried to get him help. And the league came in and said, no, we're gonna do the helping. Right? And I'm like, well, I kind of know the kid, I kind of know what's going on. And they're like, no, you gotta go through the league office. And that was very frustrating to me.
Yeah.
Because I'm there every day with him. I know him, I know what it's about. I drafted him, and yet the league wanted to kind of put their hands in, like, this is how we'll fix it. And I'm like, that's not ideal. So that was very frustrating. And then the other thing is, when you're GM, you take all the bullets.
Yeah.
The win-loss is you, every draft pick is you, every mistake that the player makes off the field is your fault because you brought him in there in the first place. So you got to be really thick-skinned to be like, I'm thinking anything accused towards of the owners, no, that's me, that's on us. That's a really hard part. It can be frustrating because you know some of the things that you're doing, maybe you wouldn't have done good.
And Mark, let me add, you like Matt Moore, there's some quarterbacks in the locker room that are the it factor. It's not just about arm, and you recognize that, and we all know the success of it. Even Andy brought Matt Moore back when Mahomes was young, and then COVID, he said, I'm gonna bring him back again. But you're right, you recognize that it factor. That's the hardest thing to scout, though, the it factor. They change.
Yeah, and you can feel it when you do these interviews at the combine, when the guys kind of walk in the room, you kind of get a sense of like, who's this? I do a lot of work with these guys pre-combines. I train them and teach them how to get ready to be prepared for the combine in their interviews. And so you feel that right as soon as you walk in, like, well, this guy just feels different. Like this is just, you kind of get that little bit of piece. And again, I got to mention that the reason I'm here is because he didn't let me sign that more. And so then my quarterback fell off the rail. I didn't have a quarterback, and then I got fired. And that's how.
So I'm gonna clarify that. You worked for your client, Matt. Just loved Don and Ponte, but he loved Miami. But I really liked. We got in a big deal, but Mark is my friend, and I really thought Tampa. He couldn't believe he could be a starter at Tampa because of Josh, and that was hard to convince him. And it's hard to talk to your player when you need to go here. You push too hard, and things go wrong. It's a fascinating story. Let's go to you.
Good afternoon, Mark. My name is Jerry Stokes. I'm representing the Navy in California. My question is, what culture trait did you see when you drafted Gerald McCoy 3rd overall in 2010?
Yes, so Gerald, it was a little easier, right? Tampa we were still doing basically the Tampa 2. And so, two of the most important positions on the will backer, Derek Brooks, in the under tackle, Warren Sapp. And we were the 3rd pick in the draft. And so really everybody in the country knew Sam Bradford was going #1 at that time. So now it's down to Stuart McCoy, right? So you swing and you're not going to miss, which was nice. And I didn't think either one could possibly miss. Gerald had a different demeanor to him, where it was like he was gentle giant off the field, but then we put the helmet on. Like when we went to his private workout and he put the helmet on, he was dialed in, intense, and different. And I was like, who is that guy? So it really helped me know that I'm pretty sure that Sue was going 2, and then we were going to get Gerald. So I wouldn't say that wasn't a hard pick. That was a really talented first top 10. If you go back and look at that draft class, special draft class, those top 10. But I would sit there and say that was the difference, where Sue was just scary all the time, right? I mean, Sue, you walk in here and you do this scout, and he's a gentle giant too, and Sue was a different beast. But those guys were good. My best pick was Levante David, the linebacker that plays. I had to trade up and go get him. He just, he was 225 pounds and played like he was 240. And he ran everywhere to hit anything he could, and he played as hard as he could, and he still does that now, 12 years later.
Yeah, it's amazing. Next question.
Hi, I'm Maddox. I'm from Ball State. I'm talking specifically about the jump that a lot of good scouts make to the pro personnel level. Is there any specific trade that you see those scouts that get upgraded to the personnel, usually the next step?
So how do you move up the ladder, right?
Yes, sir.
But for me, it was when I was the director of pro scouting, it was kind of taboo at the time. It was stealing other people's practice squad players.
Yeah.
Like you really weren't supposed to do that, but I'm like, yeah, you can do this. And so I stole one from Marvin Lewis, and he went out in the paper, and he actually said in the paper, like, 12 aren't supposed to be doing this. And I'm like, shouldn't he get in trouble for that? Like, yes. Market. But I found different guys. Like I stole Donald Penn off the Minnesota Vikings practice squad. And Donald Penn was undrafted and became a left tackle in the league for 12 years, right? And so when you can go steal, you can show, or you bring in a workout and like, God, that guy was a good player. Like that was a good sign. This free agent was an inexpensive free agent. Mark recommended him, or the scout recommended him, and voila, that kind of really helped build guess, the resume of my scouting acumen.
Is it allowed now to steal players? Is that allowed to
Yes.
steal players?
Yeah, now it's rampant.
We don't call it stealing anymore. Scouting. Right, next.
Thank you. Joshua Anderson from Winona State University in Minnesota. I was wondering, when you take over an entire organization, I'm assuming you have a leadership or organizational philosophy you bring with you. How do you implement that from the top down, in and out of your player personnel department?
Yeah, you got to decide. I guess the best way to say it is like, what type of person do you want? What does your team want to look like? Like, where do you want to go? In Tampa, we cut it down too hard. Like, we took too much leadership out of the building. We started fresh, and that was really hard. Our first year, we were 3-13. It was bad, right? And then we turned around the next year, got to 10-6. So, but it was really like, what's the personality of your locker room going to look like, and who are the people you're bringing in? And there was guys that I missed on that, and that come back and haunt me a little bit. That I know that maybe I should have taken that player. But the main part was trying to like put a locker room together that you'd be proud to have your parents walk in and like, these are good guys, these are good people that are doing the right way. And so many players get a bad rap. Some of these guys are great guys. And yet one player does something off the field, now everybody starts to stereotype NFL players as bad guys. I mean, on the flight here, I got to sit next to Adelius Thomas, who's a really famous Baltimore Raven. And played a decade or whatever it was. And Adelius, he didn't know who I was. I didn't really know who he was. He was a big dude. And so I introduced myself, and he was the most charming, nice guy you've ever met. And you forget about that, how just humans do it, good people.
I agree. Next question.
Hi, Dalton Scott from Indianapolis University, Indiana University, Bloomington. As an experience as a GM, what's been the most effective ways for you to deal with the off-season salary cap and the cap room in off-season? Yeah,
so mine wasn't great. So I did run the cap for the Bucks, and then I hired Mike Greenberg, who's probably going to be a GM one day, and he threw the salary cap. He's that good. But I had to do that. The weird thing about my time as GM is 2009 to 2000 through the 2013 season, so the start of 2014, the salary cap, if I'm not mistaken, went up $1 million total over 5 years. So it was the hardest stretch I've ever run into salary cap in the history of the NFL. I mean, this year's going to go 22, 25 million. It went $1 million over 5 years. So when you made a mistake, you were dead. You signed Carson Wentz to a long-term extension. Well, I love you, Carson. Let's turn it around. Now you can just like get Carson out of here. And so that's the thing that I think is so different, is that you have so much more manageable ability to change the roster over if you have to in the offseason. And then I think you've got to also look at your football team and truly make sure that you're evaluating your players first before you go out and try to add somebody else, to make sure that you've got the right, who, am I getting rid of a person? Am I changing just for the sake of change? You don't want to fall into that trap.
Go ahead.
Hey, you doing, Mark? Ryan from Philadelphia. When you were dealing with agents, what was like the most valuable information that you knew an agent could know? Like the salary cap that the team used for that position, their knowledge of football, like the difference between a 3-tech and a 1-tech. Like, how did you know that agent knew what he was talking about?
Yeah, so this combine was very important every year, right? Because as much as you're not supposed to be talking about other players and other teams, that does happen. And in addition to, as you get closer to the draft, agents starts to kind of get a better feel of where he thinks his player's going to go. So I had a group of probably four, maybe 5. One of them was Adam Schefter, you guys heard, that we had complete confidence in. That's how Schefter has become such a powerhouse in the National Football League, is because he can give information and absorb information. That's very helpful. And he still does it with GMs around the National Football League that I would trust. If I tell Adam, hey, look, I'm going to cut my left guard in 2 weeks from now, he's going to hold on to it until the day before, and he's going to text me back and say, can I get it out there? I said, yes, but can you tell me something? And then I'd get a little piece of something from him. So really it was, with the agents, there's a lot of battles I've had with them. Most of them are great people, guys and girls. Really good, great time around here, seeing them all again. And I will still work with a lot of agents in what I do. I think the main thing is just like, again, building that relationship that's real instead of just like cursor. It's always business. It's always business. I didn't like that.
I asked you a question when I was hosting the chat way back about would you not take a guy because of the agent? And I don't know if I can remember the answer. Would you ever not take a guy? And tell them why.
Just because there's a few agents that you can kind of count on one hand in the National Football League that if that player signs with that agent, that tells you there's something wrong with that kid. And so I just know he's been corrupted or something. There's just something wrong. And so I'll just pass. I'd rather not. And I'd actually rather take, a guy that's a friend of mine that I really know. He's like, hey, do you give my guy a shot as an undrafted free agent? Yes. Because I know I've been watching the way that person recruits or where they recruit, and I've seen that they've found like little hidden gems over the years. So yeah, bring them on in, and sometimes you might want one guy, you might take like 3 or 4.
See, what he's saying is a good agent with a good human being can be an asset to your client too. So don't try to oversell and be somebody else as an agent. Be yourself. It works out. There's no secrets after a while. Go ahead.
Eric Krasinski from Akron, Ohio. Similar to the question that was posed earlier about the 18-game season, I guess, do you have any thoughts about how to prepare for the Thursday night game, or is that more of a coach's thing?
Yeah, no, it's a little more coaching thing. That's what's nice about when they put the schedule out early.
Yeah.
So you can kind of start to build out, are we traveling overseas? When do we want to go? When do we want to get ready? Thursday night games are the hardest on the training staff and players. The coaches are creatures in habit. They grind and they're going to get to it and they're going to be fine. Sometimes what we would do is when we have a Thursday night game in the preseason, the coaches might start to work on that game plan already way in the preseason when it might be week 7, right? So that way they get a couple extra days of prep work done, so that when they get to the fast week, they've already got some of the stuff already done that they can do, and they take it off from last year's film. So now they don't have to go back to break down last year's film in 1 week. Instead, they've already done last year's film. They've got it shelved already to make it easier for them to get through a short week, if that makes sense.
Next question.
So as a general manager, I want you to deal with scouting yourself, and when you draft a very talented player that doesn't have the production in first years, how do you deal with his future?
How do I deal with a player that's not productive early?
Yeah.
Yeah, so I tell this to players all the time. Yes, where you get drafted certainly means how much money you're bringing home, right? Because the higher you get drafted, the more money you're going to have. Where you get drafted tells you how many more opportunities you're going to get than the next person. You're drafted in the first, second, and third round, we're going to give you every chance to fail. And if you fail your rookie year, we're going to give you sophomore year. If you fail your second year, we're still going to look at your third year. And then the fourth year, you're probably going to get out, right? Because you didn't make it, but I'm going to give you a lot. If you're a 6th-round pick and you fail year 1, you're probably going to cut. Just that difference. If you're 5th-round pick, you're right on the border. 4th, I might give you 1 year. I mean, that's the way the GMs think, because you just don't get as many opportunities. The best story I can tell anybody on this history for me was a guy named Rondé Barber. His rookie year, he was horrific. He'll admit it. He was terrible. And yet we drafted him in the 3rd round and we kept him. And then he got in the offseason, understood the offseason program, understood Tampa 2, dove into it. He started 200 consecutive games at corner. No one's ever done that in the history of the NFL. He is the only one that did. But we were going to cut him. If he would have been a 4th rounder, that might have never happened, because he might have gone to a different team where he didn't fit the same scheme the same way. But he pushed himself through. But it's just about the different opportunities based off of where you get drafted. So I tell the players, it's not about the money where you get drafted. It's about having a chance to sneak through it where you have a rough spot. You got to be able to persevere through that.
Thank you. Mark, here's my question. College athletics is seismic. It changes. GMs, scouts, salary cap. I got 3 questions off that. One, I think the future GM of the NFL may be the former GM of a college program. Your comments on what's going on in college and pro right now.
It's amazing. I mean, what a time to be in this world.
Yeah.
With all the opportunities that are going to be available at the college ranks. I don't disagree with you.
Yeah.
Like if somebody goes into one of these mid-tiers, let's take Jim Nagy, right, who runs this Senior Bowl, but now it's Oklahoma. If Oklahoma ends up winning the national championship, it's going to be hard for someone to hire Jim Nagy as a GM in the National Football League. As well as it's going to create openings in the NFL, because there's more and more, there's probably 70 colleges that are going to hire GMs. I don't know how many have them yet, but I would start to study that in my little flow chart. If I was at home and doing this, I'd be like, okay, who all is going to have these GM positions? Who's all filled them and when? And start to really kind of follow that process. But know that, when somebody leaves, like Mike Martin, who now is in charge, and I hired Mike in Tampa, who's in charge of Notre Dame football, is now the GM of Notre Dame. He just left Detroit. What does that mean in Detroit? Opening, right? So you got to really be, this is where you got to be on top of it as much as you can be. This is where you go, and you don't call the general manager of the team as soon as Mike Martin leaves, but you do call maybe the director of college scouting and try to put your name in there. You do handwrite a letter. Try to handwrite a letter to the director of college scouting when you see these people get jobs, or a pro person that gets a job. You handwrite a letter, you're going to get a reply, because no one does it at all, right? And if you could tell a little story about that person you're writing the letter to, like, hey, I know Dr. Lashbrook, you got your start, boom, 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 boom. I'm here, but I saw there might be an opportunity. Can I call you? But you talk about the person, then you talk about yourself, right? Make them understand that you've taken the time to invest not just in the job, but the person that you might be working for. It's a hidden.
So let's talk about transfer portal. Howard left K-State, went to Ohio State. Help me out as a scout. You talk to your colleagues all the time. Identifying talent who's played on 3 different teams. What's the impact on that scouting report? I'm fascinated by it all. I mean, there's players that finally get a play that never got a play because they're stuck in a place. It's a new world. What is the impact of that on scouting and judgment of draft?
Yeah, well, I mean, it gives us a lot more background and character for the kid, because now we have maybe 2 or 3 schools where we can contact coaches about that person and tell me a little bit about him, why he left, everything like that, as well as the kids that have to come here and explain the different reasons why he's left. You know, I mean, think about the quarterback in this class, Quinn Ewers, right? He's a high school senior, and he's offered $1 million to not play his high school football season. Now, do you judge him negatively or positively on that, right? Well, you don't want to compete. It's $1 million 5 years ago. I mean, how would you not tell your 18-year-old son, if it was my son, like, you could play high school football for a year, or you go to Ohio State early and start being take the $1 million. But people, you know, 2 years ago would have said Quinn was a selfish kid. Like, this kid's selfish. Now it's like, hey, look, if you can get in a portal, it's a business. It is a business, and I know that's tough. And that's what we got to kind of disseminate through is like, is this kid making good business decisions, and why is he making these business decisions? So it makes a lot more stress on us a little bit, because if you navigate this correctly and you're a good college football player, by the time you're done with college, if you're good, I mean the starter that can start just about anywhere, you should have $2 to $3 million in your bank account before you go to the National Football League. Here's my concern. Right now, there's a lot of financial advisors trying to work with them to try to get them to understand taxes and trying to get, but it's teaching another generation of kids that instant gratification. And that's the big concern we have in the NFL is, okay, yeah, you've got money now, but as a college 19-year-old, what would you do with $2 million? I had a great old time, right? And look at what happened to Carson Beck, right? He bought those 2 cars, and the whole team was like, this guy's a punk. He's just shoving it in our face. So Georgia, he's not at Georgia anymore, right? He's down in Miami, and yeah, he got some money, but his money, and that money, the way he used it, has really been a negative on the way the NFL and colleges look at Carson Beck.
Okay, so I read Darren Heitner this morning. A lot of agents are leaving, becoming general managers. You're in the ecosystem as an agent. Let's go back to tell us what you do now in your business with football. You're still in football.
Yep.
You're here working. Just tell them what you do now.
So besides the jibber jabbering, television and radio and all those things, and I've got a podcast. So if you guys want to just start, I've never done a podcast before, so we're starting that new one there.
We'll promote it.
It'll be great. But what I do is I work with a company called X10 Capital, and what we do is we work 3 different sports. So we do football, which I run. We have a basketball division, which is just NBA, and a Major League Baseball division. We invest in athletes early in their professional career, meaning year 1, year 2, year 3 of NFL. Same for NBA. Usually for Major League Baseball, they've got maybe 1 year or 2 years just getting into arbitration world. So they're in the loop. The Major League Baseball, but so they're not in the minor league system because it's tough. Anyway, so I'll go to an NFL player and I'll say, hey, look, I think you're really good. You got a great rookie year. I'm going to give you $3 million today cash, right? I'm going to buy 10 to 15% of your future earnings. All right. So I'm betting on you, but the goal here is this. I'm going to put a cap on it so you know exactly how much money you might pay if you become the 60, 70, $80 million player. But here's the caveat. I'm going to give you $3 million. It gets taxed. So you're going to have about $2 million to save just roughly after tax. I can't make you do it, and I don't do it for you. You have to put that money away long term, right? So you got to force these guys to start saving early in their careers because they don't. No one saves as much money. Have you ever met somebody who said I saved too much money when I was younger? I have not met that person. But the goal of our company is to have these young athletes start to invest money in retirement early so they can start compounding. Because one more round of time value money, one more round of compounding means later in their life when it's 16 million, it turns into $32 million in just 7 or 10 years. I mean, think about it. So if you can get a young guy $1 million today at 23 years old, by the time they're 65, if you got the regular return rate of just the S&P 500, that $1 million turns into $64 million because they made a $1 million decision today. So I work with athletes and we provide that. When I do that $3 million lump sum to the player, there's not debt, there's no loan. If he gets in a car the next day, he gets in a car crash to never play football again, you keep the money. So it's a project that I believe in, but it's also a process because a lot of players are like, well, I'm going to bet on myself. right? I don't need that. I don't want to pay money out. I'm just going to make it. I'm going to make it. Here's the thing. Having been in this league, and I think combined we're probably, 70, 80 years in knowledge of football, every player thinks they're making it, right? They're wired that way. But you can't play in the National Football League if you think you're like, oh, I'm not sure I'm going to make it. Yes, you are. I've met so many guys who are like, I'm playing 10 years, make $100 million. And I've seen so many of those guys in year 3, year 4, they're like, they're not around anymore, right? It's tough. It's, you know, people just don't understand. That's why I love the sport. People don't understand how hard it is just to go to a training camp. To get invited to a training camp in the National Football League is ridiculous. It is that hard. And now if you make a team, now you got to make it 4 years. So it's such a hard journey that if I can be part of it when they're 22 or 23 and actually put that money to work, they do it. I know that when they're my age, they're going to be so glad they did it. And it's just trying to convince them, make them understand what their financial advisor is going to be doing.
Last question.
Daniel Markland, Dallas Cowboys. I had this teed up before you just talked about your investment, you know, what you're doing with investments. But it's even more important now. So can you speak to the emerging trends and the new skill sets required with regard to analytics and data in a GM role, and then obviously with what you're doing with?
Yeah, so we have an entire analytics team that obviously, so the way we do it now, go back to your first part. The way we do it is I do it old school. I watch the player, I write the report as if I was a scout still, looking at a young player saying, hey, look, here's his strengths, weaknesses, how long I think he'll play, players he kind of reminds me of, how much money I think he'll earn in his career. I submit that to our system, and then we have a quant team that's created a whole process that looks at everything, the top like 50 things that get that position paid, whether it's snaps or it's age debut or it's it's PFF grade. I mean, it could be a lot of different things that go into it, and then they Monte Carlo it 10,000 times, and it spits out this player's worth 2.5 million, and the salary cap should be this. And then we come together, and the computer reminds me that I could be wrong, right? Because not many players ever that were undrafted at safety make it this much money, and I can tell the computer like, I know this kid, I've met him personally, or I know the scout, or I know the GM on that team. He's told me this is like one of their up-and-coming players. The computer can't figure that out. And then we come together, and that's how we use analytics, is to try to make sure I think the normal football world does that also, right? My favorite analytic, and I don't think these GMs are doing it yet, is look at the correlation of a 20 shuttle for offensive linemen under a 4.5. It's pretty weird how many of those guys make it in the National Football League. And I don't think so. I'm not against analytics by any. If you can show me a trend, I don't want to just see data and it's like, oh, it's like 58%. Like that's not close enough. But if you can show me the 20 shuttle, it's like 85% make it and play like 4 more years. That's a crazy number. Like I'm going to start looking at that trait a little bit more because that's something.
Is AI coming your way?
I mean, I guess it has to come.
Yeah.
I mean, AI is going to be everywhere. It's just the whole hard thing about AI is I'm getting tricked all the time. I'll watch something on Instagram or TikTok and I'm like, is that really real or is that not? I have no idea. And that's frustrating to me.
Hey, an SMWW, thank you, Mark.